And this is another one where you can choose multiple answers. Oh, I thought we weren't live streaming.
Sorry.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't need to. What tests would you prefer students to take for college and career readiness? What tests would you prefer students take for school accountability purposes? Select all that apply. For the purpose of the summative reporting, when would be most beneficial to receive reports? How do you think schools should use state assessment results to support student success? Select all that apply. How do you think schools should use state assessment results to strengthen teacher quality and instruction? Select all that apply. At what grade level should students begin taking computer-based assessments?
So just for some kind of feedback, is this mostly because you don't have enough computers available, or is it because you think you're not teaching kids with computers, or?
Because research shows that kids don't do as well on computer tests as they do on paper when they're younger.
Well, there is a park research, but I don't think it's even age-based. It does show some of that, yes, and part of that is because of the fact that they're able to test. There's some argument that there's some argument that paper pencil does not get to the depth and breadth of the standard, because a lot of times in math and so on, where you're doing graphing and other things, you can't do the same thing with paper pencil. So when you try to translate to a static test, they've done a pretty good job of trying to make it the same to equate the paper and the computer, but sometimes it's just hard for that reason.
I think that third through fifth grade students still have a harder time of tracking and just being able to understand how to make something bigger so they can see it better, and just the whole aspect of taking the test online, where it's easier for them to track on paper and pencil. And I think you're losing what's their ability, and it becomes what's their ability to manipulate the computer test, and it's not their ability to know the material.
Yeah, it is a bit of an equity issue. I mean, I look at a lot of kids and they're, just by 5 years old, they've got it. But then you have kids who don't have access to technology, and if you don't put them in front of a computer at the school, they aren't going to have, the same opportunity. So it's very important to consider all of that and whether they in fact get to use computers in the third grade and how they use them.
I will make a note on students on IEPs that take the paper test versus the online test in sixth grade. The online testers, based on the state level data, perform a lot better. I don't know if that's because of their cognitive difference or what, but state level data shows that they are performing better on the online
But I mean, is
assessment.
that just a blanket IEP? Because not every kid that has an IEP has the same difficulties. You
Sure.
might be comparing apples to oranges. So you might have someone who's taking a computer test that's on an IEP, and they're taking the computer test because they're capable of it, whereas you may have someone who's taking the paper pencil because they don't have the visual motor, or they need the breaks, or they need, all these other, it's not just the paper pencil, it's everything
Sure.
that goes along with it.
Well, sure, absolutely. There's going to be many, many different factors, but when you look at it from a big picture perspective, you're not going to dig down into the weeds for that. But the whole purpose of an accommodation is to ameliorate those effects of the disability. And if that's not helping, and paper's not helping, then maybe that's the wrong accommodation.
But I mean, if you can't compare kids with a different cognitive ability, because usually the kids that take the computerized test usually have a higher,
You're higher functioning.
or they're higher functioning, and so you can't compare a kid that has a 120 IQ that has who's on an IEP because they have a hard time focusing. You can't compare that to someone who's on an IEP because they're
Sure, I don't have that information,
right. So I
but
mean, that's
the sample size is 1,000, so it's still a, that's just information, right? We
Right.
haven't done a study to pull their IP and say,
right.
well, here's
so
where
I
their
mean, you can't
IQ
really
is.
take and make a blanket statement like
Right,
that.
no, right, well, I
Right.
wasn't, I added the caveat, but
Right.
on the same flip side, we hear the same blanket statement of, well, students do better on paper and for IEP kids, and that's not true either. And that, I've heard that many times, and so I definitely want to dash that myth. Okay, at what performance level should students be provided remediation?
You only answer one.
Yes.
So is it that one and anything lower than that, or?
Yeah, just pick one there. I think it covers either unsatisfactory or just limited knowledge. I guess that would assume that you'd also include unsatisfactory. Or both, so that's where it covers both, actually, the next one. Or leave it up to local decision.
What is the purpose of the Oklahoma School Testing Program?
There's not another one.
What recommendations would you give to promote an effective and efficient testing system?
And again, this question comes up worded this way because this is the way it's worded in state law. So we'd always welcome additional comments.
Just lost my thing.
Should state assessment results show how our students compare to other states?
Okay, so thank you, and we're gonna be aggregating all this information, and presenting it, from the regional presentations that we're doing, we'll aggregate all this and present it to our task force as one of the pieces of information that they can use in making decisions, so thank you. Now we're gonna give you updates on assessments.
Can I get one of the handouts?
Certainly, I think there might be.
So I'm
There are a
gonna
few right there.
I'm gonna skip over the House Bill 3218 and ESSA information because I think you guys have probably heard about
Anybody
it
else?
a lot. So are you good, or do you want me to go over it again? Does anybody
Might put
want
it
me?
up there quickly.
You do want me to go over it again?
Yes,
No,
he's
they're
reviewing.
saying no. Okay, we're gonna talk about first the programmatic changes to the actual assessment program. Okay, so with House Bill 3218, EOIs, ACE, and OCCTs go away as they are today, or last spring, okay? So it decoupled assessment from graduation requirements. So as of July 1st, 2016, graduation requirements do not include an assessment component mandated from the state level. That is now put off to the local level to make that determination. So at the local level, your boards will adopt a policy and determine what assessment requirements are used for graduation at your local school district. All of the testing windows for EOI, the winter try, the retest window, and the summer window, they're gone. So now we'll only have one testing window, okay? So there's no retesting. So once a student takes the test, the OCCT or the OSTP, they're done. There's no more test, okay? So this year, we will have, for high school, we'll have grade 10 assessment suite in ELA, math, and science. U.S. history once in high school, so what that'll look like is if they're enrolled in U.S. history in 10th grade, that's when they will take the U.S. history EOI or end of year test, or if they're in 11th grade or 12th grade, whichever grade in high school, that's when they'll take it. we are working on a RFP for a college and career readiness assessment, like the ACT or the SAT, for this upcoming year, to be similar to how we ran the junior pilot program for the ACT this year. So that's coming down the pike, but because of procurement laws, we have to go out to bid. So we're soliciting bids soon. It should go out on the street soon. A little word about reading test. Yes, sir.
On your math, the 10th grade, is that geometry or the algebra 2?
For
Just math in general?
Yeah, it'll be grade 10 math. It'll be comprehensive. It'll be mostly algebra 1 based on the new standards and a little bit of geometry. Okay. And in the booklets, the blueprints are in there. And if you wouldn't mind right now, since it got brought up, go to the grade 10 math blueprint, please. And it's toward the back. So it's a light blue color. And when you first glance at the total, it looks like it's 80. That's actually 60. The ink bled a little bit. So if you don't mind, just writing a 6 in there. And all the numbers with an 8 are actually the colored. Let's see. Data and probability. That's actually 6. That's not an 8. So the blue color and then even that darker gray color, it kind of bled over. And then on the next page, English Language Arts, it looks like 81 items. That's actually 61 items. The web ready versions, it looks perfectly fine. It was just that we shrunk this down and manipulated it, and when it got printed, it kind of got a little messy there.
So is that an 8 or a 6 on the geometry on the map?
6.
Also.
Okay, a little bit about the English Language Arts test next year. So we've had reading tests in the past, and now we are going to be assessing new standards, and our new standards are incorporate all of English Language Arts, and how we're going to measure the writing process, because it is throughout all the standards. In 3, 4, 6, and 7, we're going to utilize multiple choice items to get to the heart of those writing processes. And for 5, 8, and 10, we're going to have an embedded constructive response item. Okay? So there will not be a separate writing test or anything like that.
Okay, so it's going to be a constructive response. It's not going to be a full-on essay.
It will be paired passage.
Okay.
Yes.
So it won't be like the full, like really long 2 paired passages with the 4 or 5.
Yes, there will be paired passages. Yeah.
Do you know,
Okay.
she wants to know how many.
Yeah,
Just
I mean-
one.
I
One.
know, but I mean, is it going to, is the
It's
is the
all
response-
embedded as one test with
Right.
that question.
Okay, but
How long is the student
how
response
long is
supposed
the
to be? She's
response?
asking.
Because that's what I'm saying, because before, it's been anywhere from a 4 to 5 paragraph essay that they've responded to, and that usually takes them anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to finish, because they're
that's
going
true.
through their annotations and everything. So are we going to have a 2 to 3 hour multiple choice test, and then have at the very end a 2 to 3 hour essay portion?
Well, the multiple choice is typically 60 to 80 minutes.
It usually takes though.
No.
The 60 minutes that are the 60 questions where it says it usually just takes an hour and a half, usually takes
3.
yeah,
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
we
they
may
have
need
as much
we
time.
may need to look at
Well,
putting
so-
some
and this
type of
is true.
window in
I mean,
place.
I do think that so if you look at depth of knowledge, some of these, typically people count on a multiple choice item taking 2 minutes. At
For
max.
regular and
Right.
online.
So I mean,
For
what is
paper
given
pencil,
is
anything.
never what
That's
it
just,
is.
but that isn't, depending on the complexity and the depth of the item, obviously. You notice on that survey, if it's a true false or something simple, it's easier than it is if it's a more complex. So yes, so some of that we do have more rigorous standards with breadth and depth, and this is an untimed test.
Exactly.
So given that it's an untimed test, Although we did have an incident this year where somebody gave the test for 12 hours to students.
Give
Couple
them one for
students. And
6.
no, really, the teacher was trying to, and the administrator were trying to help, help the child. We're really trying to help the child. But of course, that becomes just a horrible burden on a child to be sitting at a table, for 12. Anyway, so untimed really doesn't mean you can go 12 hours. But untimed does mean that unlike some tests that in order to administer them like an ACT are timed. So you have this much time to finish it and that's it. These tests do allow students who need more time to take more time.
But will there be a break in there, whereas
You
on
can,
the
this is
EOIs
why
you
you
can do
you
the
can
section.
schedule your sessions as you want to.
Yeah, there'll be a section break.
There'll be session
And the
breaks.
6, 7, 8 tests will have a section break this year.
Okay, what if take this scenario. You start the test day, the student logs in, takes portion of the test, lays their head down and sleeps for 2 hours. They start taking the test again. It comes lunchtime. They lay their head down and they sleep for 2 more hours. I've been a part of that. I've been part of a 14-hour test.
No, I know, I'm saying.
For one student, not in this state, but in another state. And the administration says, let them sleep. Because you don't know what they did the night before. They might have worked till 2:30 in the morning.
I would worry that they would sleep through your instruction too, though, on a regular day, and that might not be good.
And many days they did that.
Yeah.
But they were the sole provider for their family.
No, we all know that there are certainly cases where it's very difficult for students.
So, when we go to these untimed tests, we as educators got to realize that that's exactly what it means. If it takes 14, 16, 18 hours, then, we're painting ourselves in a corner is what we've done.
Well, so that's when it takes a long time, is when you're meeting individual students' needs.
Exactly.
And I think that we do this in the midst of reality
Sure.
with kids coming with a whole host of backgrounds, trauma, needs. And then we also realize that in 11th grade, they're going to take the ACT, and it is time.
Yes.
And to go to college, to qualify for career tech with a high skill, high industry demand certification, they have to gain admittance through an ACT math score. So that is going to be, kind of the balance that we have to strike and realize that not everyone, ACT will only make accommodations for certain things, and one is time and a half for extended time on each section, and then
Don't do double
you
time, don't do triple time.
and then you would break it in to different days. That's a possibility too. So we still want you to have those opportunities, but keep in mind kind of where we could be headed, and also keep in mind that this is a transition year with this 10th grade test. We don't know that next year the stakeholders will say we want to do that again. They may want us to go take ACT as a proxy for our federal requirements on testing, but that will be timed. That won't be, it's delivered by ACT. So we kind of have to think about those things as we think about what's right for next year after our transition year. So it's tough. This is a tough thing.
Well, and I've always kind of said ACT is really when your kids get ready for college, that's what they're looking at. And yet all through till then, we're telling them take as much time as you want, and then they get to the ACT and all of a sudden you're timed.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't think we're
that's
preparing them.
I mean, so that's
that.
that's really where we are in a position of thinking about, are we setting them on a track of being ready for that, kind of the expectations for them on that too. So these are the kinds of conversations we want to have with you.
Yeah, we definitely need to coach them to the time test.
Than most nationally,
But
if you
here's
looked
the
at the
thing.
length of most of the tests in other states, they're longer.
I know, but here's the thing though. You have a field tested item last year, but the way that it was tested is not the same.
These are national experts in assessment science and do this for other states as well. I mean, they are independent and have a certain level of expertise that is really extremely strong. And so I have confidence in that. What we really are excited about, what I'm hearing you talk about, and that's really as we think about, not this year, okay, but the next, because this year we have just a time of transition, and I want to prepare you because there's some slides that are coming up that you're going to want to see. So we're focusing on the writing at this moment. There's more we really do want to talk about. And there's going to be some slides. I know it's almost going to be 2 o'clock by the time we get to the bad news. So it's coming. So just hold on. And I'm here because I want to give it to you and not ask them to do it. But there's going to be some choices we're going to ask you to make at the end of this session. So I want to get to it and just brace yourself because there's some things we're going to have to go through that aren't ideal. But they're the only way we get to where we want to go. And that's coming on timing and windows of testing and various things. But you're bringing up some really good points, and this is exactly what we're needing to hear from you. So thank you.
And the other thing we haven't talked about is Lexile quantile.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Which we
Yeah.
probably want to, but that was back in the study for comparability and so on.
So can you
do
just
wanna
go ahead and mention that? And
Sure,
go to,
okay, then I know you want to get through this.
Yes.
So the study, House Bill 32, have you forgotten? 18 have asked us to conduct several studies, and some related to assessment, some related to accountability. So in the assessment, they name specific things like how can we be comparable, to investigate how we can have our tests be comparable to other states. You notice that was one of the questions that you answered on the poll. So one of the ways that we could look at it is, how many of you know Lexiles?
So
Right.
Lexiles are the reading, right? That national yardstick on where you ought to be from really pre-K all the way to PhD levels and different industries.
And linked to resources, so
positions.
your students and parents and everybody can do it. So quantiles are the same thing in math, and it will link your resources that you have in math that parents, teachers, and others can use. So this year you will be getting Lexile scores again. Next year, 16, 17, you will be getting Lexiles and quantiles. We're relinking with the new standards, so they'll be aligned to the new standards. So this links us to an external scale. This external scale allows us to do many things. It allows us to do comparisons to other states if we want to. It allows us to look at how our assessments, for example, on grade 10 relate to college readiness. It allows us to look at certain careers. If they get this particular score on this scale, it will say these are the kinds of careers that you can look at. Or else you better change what courses you're taking or doing. So there's just a lot of information and a lot of great use that we're going to get from Lexiles and quantiles.
And that'll start at our 3rd grade with our each year. There would be that quantile and Lexile score along with a performance band. So parents can also go, oh, well, if we're performing high, then we should see a higher score on the Lexile or a higher score on the quantile. In a way, it also helps us kind of calibrate how we are doing. It provides that comparability as well, but it allows us to continue to test our unique standards too.
And some look at growth. I mean,
Yeah.
where your student was in this range, the 3rd grade range, were they in grade next year? Are they in the 4th grade? So there are many uses that we're going to do this. So we're very excited to have more information for you on that. But we won't be having it until next spring, 16, 17, the results from that year.
Go ahead. So there's some real important things we want you to. So hold on, like wake up again, and we need you to be really focused on this because I know we're at the end here of the day. Okay, this is good slide.
Okay, so this is an infographic for what the state assessment program will look like next year. And you'll notice that social studies has been cut out of all 3 through 8 testing. So there's no grade 5, no grade 7, no grade 8 social studies. There's also no separate writing test. So we have our 3 through 8, math, ELA, and then our science in grades 5, 8, and 10. The thing about grade 10 science testing is that if a student has taken the biology EOI in previous years and has a valid OPI score, which means they have between a 400 and 999 on that OPI score, they will be exempt from taking the test. And that'll be something done automatically through the pre-code process. Now, if they have an exemption or a DNA or an absence in their score, that they're going to have to take the test. U.S. history, I've already kind of explained that. It'll be based on the courses they're enrolled in, and then we'll have our college prepared readiness assessment as well.
Well, is something being looked at similar for the Algebra 1 for kids that take
No,
Algebra 1?
Because remember, this is a cumulative knowledge point that's being assessed competencies at 10th grade. So it's got to be cumulative, just like ACT is cumulative. So we're trying to prepare where when they've exited from high school and DOIs. They have the remediation gap. 10 years ago, before we started ACT or EOIs, the remediation rate of kids going to college and having to take courses that didn't count yet, but you paid college tuition for, was at 38% of our high school graduates that went to college. That's of our highest performing kids. 11 years later, it's at 39%. So we've got to change this. EOIs, 3 tests, didn't do it. It's about sustained knowledge, being able to keep moving with that. ACT is 23%, it used to be at least pre-algebra. I mean, they have got to keep these skills going instead of just a little bit as soon as you finish the test, which gives permission to forget.
And it also, this year, will be a slightly different test because it will have geometry.
And so
Not very many items if you look at the blueprint, but it
yeah,
has
but
some
that
geometry.
blueprint will show you where should you be. Remember, you're going to get a quantile score. So that's going to help us kind of calibrate that with where are other kids, in the country in 10th grade in the spring. So where are they showing up as the right level of knowledge, which is also a predictor as we move forward with a college readiness tool for their junior year. Okay, so that help that kind of that streamlining of it should help. All right, but are you ready to okay, he's like, push the button. Okay, so here's, all right, so there's 3 slides coming up. And there are 3 choices. And you don't need to like post these on the internet or anything because all they are choices. Okay, so we don't want anything to be considered that this is what we're doing because we don't know what we're doing until we hear from you. So there's 3 choices about when we start our assessments, when the window would open, and how long it stays open. And then when we get the results back is going to be determined on the decision. Okay, so we're going to have a poll. If you're a testing coordinator or a superintendent, you already have this in your inbox. And it's a survey from the State Department. It's open to the public. Anyone can go to it online on the State Department page, on the assessment page. There'll be a link to this. And we aren't going to ask you to do poll everywhere on this at all. This is going to take time looking on a big screen so that you can look at dates and actually make some sense out of what makes sense for my school or my district or my classroom. And so there's a couple things we want to talk about. The first thing, and first of all, before we go there, you're going to not like any of these options. Okay, so just setting expectations here. But remember, this is like we're going to get to something really good. But we have to go through this process to get there, and part of what makes this lengthened in the getting back results is that we are setting standards, that standard setting process when we have new assessments. Usually it's just one subject. This year it's 3. We are doing this cut score setting, and that's very involved. And that is going to be for math and English, language arts, and science. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so first option, you're not going to like it, but here's the first option. It is an earlier start to the testing window and a shorter window. This is pretty brief.
But remember, there's no February, even in this one. It's
That's not happening. It's just
February's
this.
gone.
And this is just for, there's no retest, right? No retesting. So remember that. Again, I know you're not going to like this one, but I just want you to focus on this is optimal in terms of the fastest return. So look at RSA reporting, June. All preliminary reports, August. And then all final reports, September. And then paper to parents in October.
And
all right.
I'm not sure that I laid the groundwork to
Okay, go
say
ahead.
that not, remember we talked about new standards, new assessments, and new performance levels? So, we're now going to have to go through that whole process next summer where teachers come in, help us look at, this is where we tested in the year, this is where, therefore we need to say, well, the kid was in my class for 9 months or 6 months or whatever. If everybody were to take the test in early April, then you would consider that how long instruction has occurred before that time. Then they look at, okay, so this is how much the student should know by then. And that's where they look at setting the standard. And then they look at impact data and say, well, this is how our students did. So you set the standard, and then that will become your baseline going forward.
Okay,
So there's extra time to do this.
think about RSA, okay, and 3rd grade reading. So if third grade, let's just look at this one. This is right after spring break. Now, every third grade teacher,
It's
No,
March,
there's a week in between.
March 27th.
it's, you can't see it, but you will online, okay? So I'm gonna just tell you, this right here is that line, and it is third grade, it's third grade reading, and it's just got March 27th through 31st. It's the week after spring break, okay? As an example, in option 1. So every third grade teacher is gonna freak out, okay? And so what you have to also start thinking, if we choose, now go to the next slide. Can you see this from where you are? Okay, so then early, this is, we're calling early window, early but longer window, okay? But still, early, we didn't change the start of those dates, okay? What you see is that the reporting is still June. All preliminary is September, and final reports in October. So this leaves it open a little bit longer, and the results are coming back about the same in terms of RSA, right? And what about preliminary?
Preliminary about
A month later for preliminary. That, isn't it 1 week difference? Isn't it 1 week longer? This?
Yeah, this is about 2 weeks.
This is about 2 weeks longer than the first option. But we think that this is an important option because to get all 10th graders through, it's the first time we've done at the 10th grade level all grades. I mean all of one grade level. Do you see that? So we need you to think about your computers. Can we do this? How do we do this? It's different than 7 EOIs because of the way you can kind of stagger that. So you just need more thought in that. But back to RSA, third graders need to remember, third grade teachers, that the RSA law changed. They don't have to wait to know if they're going to summer school, or they don't have to wait to know if they're passing and then that they would be part of a conference RSA team decision. Starting earlier, they are able to begin taking those various tests that can show if they have proficiency or not. So we should have that whittled down to a few students or a known number of students in third grade. And then when they do take it, like Katie said, they will be judged not on end of third grade, but on where they are when they take that test. So let's just call it right after spring break, okay? If you wanted to say that second option would be the best of 3. And then we'll show you the third one. Basically, it's what we did last year, okay? But wait till you see the results on when you get it back. I bet you're not picking that one, but we'll see, okay? So we talk about then that we have 6 weeks after that test to go ahead and continue to work with that student and demonstrate proficiency with the DIBELS or STAR or whatever is used. You know, I think there's like 13 different options. So best practices would be when you realize at the spring break point they still haven't made that, enroll them in summer school. They're already going to be a student that's on the bubble or has weak skills that need to be supported. So it makes sense to go ahead and go. And then by the time summer school's out, you're going to know that they've already made that, or they may have made it, you know, during the end of the school year or during summer school on an alternative tool. But that's just something that we don't think all districts are using, some of those benchmark type supports that really are part of best practices. Okay, last option, same start and same length as last year. So you wouldn't get RSA until July. Preliminary results, shocker, October. Preliminary. Okay, but remember that there's not the graduation requirement with test results. So keep that in mind, because I think we're still thinking EOI, you know, and the way we've always done things for 11 years. And then this, to me, this is just way too late. Now, speaking to this, A through F school report card is not due to USDE until December 31. So can you go back to item 2, option 2? So if you were to get results back and finalized in October, you know, we would be delayed, but we would still hit that mark. Then we will have satisfied, once all this is done, the transition year of our state law, but also federal law, and we're able to set, in a knowledgeable, informed way, with input, a plan for going forward. what we didn't want to have happen was a decision made by legislators with 2 weeks at the end of session, and then we just live with it. So our proposal was, we would like, and we made a proposal of a 10th grade transition, suite of assessments, and then let's talk it through and find out if we want to go to ACT, that has to go to peer review. And peer review is a new part, it's coming back as a requirement under ESSA. We didn't have that during No Child Left Behind. Katie was a peer reviewer, also worked at USDE. And so those national experts who are assigned that have to do that peer review and return that back to USDE. Then it comes to us, we make the changes, we go back, going back and forth. It takes time. And also those states that are doing this with ACT are Common Core states. So they're out for peer review now. They haven't had results back and they submitted in April.
I just sent a text to Wisconsin today.
So we certainly want to see what happens with them, but we would like to at least measure our standards, know that the length of those tests are going to need to be a little bit lengthy because you want to be able to test high, at level, and below on each standard. And then we're able to really help and support those lower performing students as we can know more, have better informed information about how they're doing. If we shift to ACT straight away, we don't have low support, information for students that are underperforming. And I think that if we can see the value in what we are doing, we're going to come back with some really rich tools, okay? But these are not easy times, and I just want you all to know, just kind of brace yourself for that. And we just have to kind of change our expectation a little bit, but we will get through this year. It's going to be tough on a number of levels, but it's an exciting time. Kids are going to feel different when they go to school and there's no more EOIs in the fall. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Great to see you. Thank you so much, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Joanna, done?
And it's but I'm sure the rate is set, it's supposed to be the same all the way.
Is there anybody from McGill in here?
Okay.